So next up, we've got a video from George Mount, like I said, on modern data analytics in Excel. So George is an analytics author training an Excel MVP. He's the founder and CEO of Stringfest Analytics, a consulting firm specializing in analytics education and upskilling. He's led boot camps and worked with learning platforms and practice organizations to help individuals shine with analytics at scale. George regularly blogs and speaks on data analysis, data education, and workforce development. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Economics from Hillsdale College and a Master of Science in Finance and Information Systems from Case Western Reserve University. Right, let's watch this video.
Welcome everybody to my session today on modern data analytics in Excel. My name is George Mount. I'm the founder of Stringfest Analytics. You can find me at the following sites and platforms. You can also email me at george@stringfestanalytics.com. Let's talk about modern data analytics in Excel, what that is, and what that can do for you. Okay, a little bit more about me. I hail from usually not so sunny Cleveland, Ohio. I am a Microsoft Excel MVP. I am also the author of Advancing into Analytics from Excel to Python and R. So if you're interested in learning Python, hot topic right now. I saw there are some other topics on the summit for that. You can check out that book. I'm going to talk about the next book that I have coming out in the near future toward the end. But today, we're talking all about modern data analytics in Excel. We are going to look at data profiling in Power Query. This is a really cool feature that is easily overlooked. Again, Power Query is more of a data cleaning tool, but before you clean the data, you need to know what it looks like and how it's profiled. So we're going to do that. We're going to look at pivot tables. Not so modern of an approach, but I want to show you a really cool hack that could work well and do things that data profiling can't quite do in Power Query. So again, just taking that data exploration to the next level using pivot tables. And then we're going to look at some quick dynamic array functions. If you haven't used them yet, you should definitely take a look, and that's what we'll do in the third part. So this is just a sampling of techniques in modern Excel. I suppose pivot tables aren't so modern, but it's still a cool example. To follow along, I believe that you got the downloads from somewhere, but if you are looking for the downloads, just head to this link. It's swy.co, H0FL, okay? What that's going to do is, let me pull up my folder here. Okay, so you should see this Excel VG 2023. Make sure that you extract it. If you see that it's still compressed, you're probably going to have issues with the files. And just dig in there, and you're going to see the slides. We have some demo notes. I have a blank data set that I'm going to use right now. And then the solution files will be available for you to look at. So with that all out of the way, let's go back to the slides, talk a little bit about modern Excel, and then just jump into the workbook as soon as possible. Okay, so what is modern Excel? You ask different people, you're going to get different answers, but the general argument or definition is the set of tools introduced around 2010 or 2013, things like Power Query, Power Pivot, and Power View, which unfortunately went a little bit the way of the dodo. I think Power BI kind of took over what a lot of Power View did. So we're going to substitute Power View with dynamic array functions. There's also so much more that has happened in the last 10 years, and I'm sure you've heard about, to modernize Excel. From Python to AI to Lambda functions. We're really just scratching the surface today. So we're going to focus on Power Query. I'm not going to get into Power Pivot, but we will look at dynamic array functions. So these are just ways that have really made Excel a modern analytics tool and what it can do and what it can offer. Let's take a look first at data prep and profiling with Power Query. Okay, so this file is computers.xlsx. We will continue to use this file throughout the demo here. So if you want to open up the demo notes, I'll use those as a loose draft or guide for me to follow along and show you. Let's go ahead and profile the data, and what we're also going to do is just add a quick index column. That's going to help us out for the next example. So again, to go back to the files here, open up this computer's workbook. The solutions are here, the notes are here, and let's carry on here. Again, I want to have computers.xlsx open. Okay. So this is a real life data set. It's a dated data set. These are computer prices. You're going to see things like whether the computer has a CD-ROM. The RAM amounts would be pretty disappointing for today. But I just find this a really useful data set for practicing. Okay, I've modified it a little bit because I want to plant some Easter eggs here when we actually go to profile this data. So let's go ahead and do that right now. We're going to go to Power Query. Let's go to Data. We're going to go to Get Data. We are going to go to From Table/Range. So tables, I always like to call these the missing link into Power Query. If you want your data in Power Query, you're going to have to convert it to a table or a range, usually a table. So click anywhere in here. Again, Data, Get Data from Table/Range. Let's go ahead, and my data is from A1 to J6220. It does have headers. Let's go ahead and click OK. And you'll see this is a table now. But the main attraction, right, is that this data is in Power Query. I like to call this the Narnia of Excel because it's kind of magical and it's not easy to find, right? This data tab is not clear that this is what you're going to get here in your workbook. First thing I'm going to do is just rename this query something like computers. Okay, hit enter. And you may or may not know that Power Query is really meant to be a data cleaning tool. Even if you've never used Power Query before, you're going to see up here, if you check out most of these tabs, there are things like splitting your column, filling, well, I guess this is different, but right, expanding your columns, replacing values, adding calculated columns, so on and so forth. Okay. So it's really more of a data cleaning tool, but before you clean your data, you need to be able to know what needs to be cleaned, right? And data profiling can help you with that. So let's try this out. I am over here in View, and you're going to see this section here that is the data preview. Okay. So there are a few options here. The first one, Show Whitespace, is already turned on for me. That's just going to show any trailing excess spaces in this data. You can or cannot turn on monospaces, whatever you want. It's just going to turn it more into a code type font. The three that I'm more concerned about are column quality, column distribution, and column profile. Okay, so these are all ways that will let us visualize what's going on with the data, and it may or may not clue us into things that might be wrong with this data set. First thing I need to do here with data profiling, and this is a big gotcha, where this says down here at the bottom, our column profiling is based on top 1,000 rows. Click this, and you want to make sure that it is based on the entire data set. Kind of a drag that it's just set up to profile the first 1,000 rows, but it is what it is. Okay, so again, click here, based on entire data set. Now we see there are 6,300, 6,200 thereabout rows in this data set. So the first thing I'm going to do is check this up here. I believe this is the column quality indicator. Okay, so the idea here is we're seeing what percent of these cells are valid. That just means that it's filled in correctly. That's all it means to Excel's point of view. You could have bogus numbers and they're still considered valid. Error means that you have something like a formula error, like a NA or div 0 or something like that. Empty means that the cell is blank. Power Query handles missing values a little differently than Excel. You'll see what I mean here in a second. So what I'm doing right now is scrolling here and checking what cells don't have valid numbers all the way through. And again, valid just means it's filled in and it doesn't have a cell error. And it looks like premium and screen are the two. Okay, and I'm just seeing that from right here. So what I'm going to do, because these are very, very small in number, right? Fewer than 1% of these are actually missing, empty. Let's go ahead and just hit the filter. This should look very familiar to you if you've ever filtered data in Excel. Here's this one that is null. Now that is Excel's way to name missing values. I'm going to click OK and see where this says null right now. We can just filter this one out. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and where it says load more, let's go ahead and see if there are any more. There are. So we can just remove this one for right now. Okay, and by removing, I just mean filter it out. Okay, if we want it back, of course, we can go back and redo this. This is not really a class on Power Query, but we can replace it too. But for right now, let's just go ahead and remove it. Same idea here with, it looks like maybe we fixed both of these, right? Empty values. Okay, so there's something going on right now. Power Query is a little confused. It says 100% of these are empty. I'm just going to go ahead and redo this, go back to where we were. Sometimes this lags a little bit, the data profiler. So what I'm going to do right now is just load everything. Let's undo this. And now you're seeing 100% of these are valid. So if you were seeing that too, where Power Query was just a little laggy and what cells were empty versus errors versus valid, just undo that step. Let's do this again, right? It looks like some of these are empty. Go ahead and load more, see if we have more values. Null. Okay, let's filter those out. Okay, so that's just a quick, easy way. And for whatever reason, this is lagging a little bit. And we're not seeing that these are all valid right now, but it'll happen eventually. Okay, so we did that. That's just an easy way just to filter them out. Another thing that's really helpful is checking the distinct and unique values for each column. Okay, so what we've got here is distinct means if you were to basically remove your duplicates, then you would get the number of distinct values. Okay, unique is a special thing. Unique simply means that there's something that happens once and only once in the data set. Okay, so if I head over to something like, let's go to RAM, for example, see how there are 7 distinct values and 1 unique. Okay, unique again means that there is one and only one of that. So this is a good way to check, is there anything weird going on with your data? In this case, 160 RAM, that would be quite the dream even now, especially in the 90s. Let's go ahead and just filter that one out. Again, it might be better to try to fill this data in with the right value, but for right now, let's just go ahead and remove it. I'm going to turn off monospaced. I don't particularly care for it. And it looks like CD has the same issue, right? It makes sense that CD should really only have 2 values, yes or no. It's a binary variable, right? But if I click the filter, you're going to see, let's do load more, and we have blue. Sorry, my camera's kind of blocking that. Click OK, and you'll see that, again, it takes a second to fix this stuff sometimes. But if we were to profile this, you see that blue is gone. I don't see any other ones, but again, these value distributions and down here, this data profile in general is very helpful because what we're seeing here is how many values are there, what is the mean, right? What's the standard deviation? What's the range? We're getting a count of observations for all the values. So this is basically just a visualized frequency count. So this is a really nice way to understand our data and see, are there any values that just don't make sense? Nothing really strikes me here. Premium, again, for whatever reason, it's just lagging a little bit. But things are looking good. And again, there are different ways that we could have fixed some of these bogus values, but I think just filtering them out for right now is fine. 160, again, is the one that we filtered. We can confirm that there. Click OK. Okay. Now it looks like, no, it's still there, but that's fine. All right, so the last thing that I'm going to do is add an index column to this data. You're going to see why in a minute. One of my pet peeves with Excel, or really any data set, regardless of the program, is that it have an index column. and this is an incremental index column. So basically what we're going to do right now is add that to Power Query. Let's go to add column. We're going to go to index column, and let's go to from 1. Okay, so again, right up here, add column, index column from 1. And we're going to get this index column. For whatever reason, well, I know why, any new column gets added to the right. We don't want that, so what I'm going to do right now is where it says index, just click that green right anywhere in this header. Let's just click this and move it, keep moving it to the left. All right, and drop that, okay. So now what you're going to see is that we have this incremental index column, and this is going to be super helpful for us to actually build some stuff in Excel. You're going to see why in a minute. Okay, so I'm feeling pretty good with this. Let's go ahead and close this, and I'm going to load this. Let's go ahead and load this directly to a pivot chart. Okay, so we did our data profiling, we did some minimal data cleaning. I'm sure there's some sessions on Power Query for the summit here. But let's go ahead and load this into a pivot chart. Okay, click all right. Yep, new worksheet is fine. Click OK. Okay, so my goal right now is, and let's go back briefly to the slides. I want to, so we did our data profiling. Now what I want to do is compare the distribution of computer price by category. I think I'm going to do by CD-ROM actually. Okay, we want to reshape this data. Oh wait, this is not exactly right. I'll show you what I want to do in a second here. Let's go back to the slides, or let's go back to Excel. Okay, so what I want to do is let's do, we want to visualize price distribution by CD or no CD. Okay. So let's try out how we can do this. Now, Excel in and of itself does not have the capability to plot two histograms on the same chart, but we are going to hack pivot tables and pivot charts to let us do this. Okay, so let's try this out. I'm going to take CD and move this to columns. Okay, I'm going to take price. I'm going to move this to rows. And let's take index. And what I'm going to do here is actually move this to values. Now, the big boo-boo with Excel is it just took something that really shouldn't be summed and it summed it. It's not always so smart. Actually, I think that's price. You can sum price. We don't want to sum index, which actually, this is the raw data set, so we're not going to see it there. Let's just call this computers raw, just so that's very clear. Okay, so the index column doesn't make sense to add it. So what we're going to do is take the count. You can go to your values, value field settings, and take the count. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere, and the way to interpret what we've got right now, this really ugly chart, is that at a price of $11.95, there were 20 computers without CD-ROMs and one with one. You know, maybe I should modernize my, if I'm talking modern data analytics, I should probably have a modern data example, but I just like this data set. Okay, at $13.99, 29 no's, 14 yeses. So we're getting something that visualizes this. This is just this is too granular, too hard to read. So what I'm going to do next is right click here. Let's do group. So it doesn't matter any of these values here. If I right click this and select group, oh, that's not what I wanted. Don't have them highlighted. I don't think I've ever done that before. Just click one of them and group it. And now you're going to see, okay, so grouping from $9.49, which is the minimum, and they got $53.99, which is the maximum, in $1,000 increments. Let's bring that down to $250 increments. Let's click OK. All right, so again, right click here, group, and just change that value from the minimum to the maximum. Click OK. Okay, so now what we've got here is something that looks a lot like a histogram. Basically, what we're seeing is this is allowing us to compare how many observations and this kind of index. This thing, we know every row is going to have an index number, so there aren't going to be any blanks, and each one's going to be unique, and that's going to be important here in a second as well. So that's one of the reasons that I love using my index column, is it allows us to slice and dice the data. in a reliable, consistent way. Okay. So again, the way to interpret this is that computers from $21.99 to $24.48. If I click on here, right, hover over this blue bar, you'll see the tooltip. I should see it. My computer, this camera is right in my way. Let's go to another one. Actually, let me go over here a little bit more. Okay, so if you hover this, there we go. Okay, so this is the no's, right? From 1449 to 1698, there are 640 of those, and the yeses are, give this a second here. Well, it looks like it's about 200. My tooltips seem to be not cooperating with me right now. So what we're doing here is we're able to compare the overall distribution of those prices, and it does indeed look like CD-ROMs, right? Computer CD-ROMs in general, that whole distribution, which does look like that famous bell curve for the most part. Though it's got some skew over here, right? Because you can always have, right, whatever you want to pay for a computer, you can pay that price. Whereas down here, right, you're not going to have a computer at a negative price. Let's just go ahead and make this look a little nicer, a little bit more like a histogram. First thing I'm going to do is let's just get rid of these jail bars because we don't really need them. So click on here, hit delete. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I don't really like these pivot chart buttons. So I'm just going to right click and it says, right click on any of them, hide all field buttons on the chart. Okay, so again, the first thing I did was just get rid of the grid lines. Second thing I'm going to do now is hide all field buttons on the chart. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Third thing I'm going to do here is let's make this more like a histogram. So click on any of these bars, it doesn't matter. You're going to actually right click on it, okay? And let's go to Format Data Series. And I almost always get this wrong the first time. We want to take Series Overlap and move it. Okay, I did it right this time. Take Series Overlap. So again, click any of these bars and go to Format Data Series. Series Overlap, bring that all the way to 100% and bring gap width to 0%. Okay, so now we're having something that looks an awful lot like a histogram. Couple more things I'm going to do is let's go back over here and we can always change the bin intervals. So if I right click this, let's do this in increments of $100. Okay, so I like that a little bit more. Again, this is just kind of like zooming in and out of your granularity. How many bins should you have? That's for you to decide, but I think $100 increments make sense. That seems to be a good price point there. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is let's actually change the colors of this bar chart. Well, I should add a title too. Add a title. Okay, distribution of prices with and without a CD-ROM. Okay, so let's do that. And I am going to see how these bars, the orange is kind of overshadowing the blue, right? We can't see them. It's hiding behind these orange bars for a lot of the distribution here. Let's do something about that. So what I'm going to do is click any of these orange bars or any of the blue bars. But let's start with the orange ones. Okay, go ahead and click on those. And if you come over here to this paint bucket, okay, there's this option to fill. Let's go to solid fill. So again, click any of these bars, go to fill over here, this paint bucket where it says solid fill. Okay, this is going to change the transparency. So right now, let's change it back to orange. The transparency is 0%, which means you can't see through it at all. If I go up to 100, that's invisible. I don't like either of those. Let's do something in the middle. Let's do 70%. Okay, so what you're seeing here is that we can kind of see through this, right? It is translucent, and we can see those blue bars now. Now the blue bars are kind of overpowering. So let's go ahead and do the same thing here. Solid fill. Let's make it blue. And let's make it 70% transparency. Okay, so this is looking pretty cool. Now, I know there's Python and Excel, and you could build a plot that looks very similar to this in Python now. But, I just hope that this shows you that there's really so much cool stuff you can do in Excel. And again, this isn't exactly modern, but, the more you can do with pivot tables, the better. So that ends this little section. Let's go to our last section on dynamic array functions. Okay, so if you haven't used dynamic array functions, they're going to make your life so much easier. Almost any tool that I develop in Excel these days makes pretty heavy use of them. So let's go ahead and pull up computers.xlsx. We're going to keep going there. What we're going to do is sort, filter, and deduplicate the data set right from the spreadsheet, which is really cool. So Power Query is great that it does allow us to do things like build a little pipeline that's going to let us sort the data or filter it. But, sometimes you really want that kind of ad hoc nature, that visual calculation nature of a spreadsheet that makes Excel Excel. Okay, so let's try this out. I'm going to go ahead and jump back into the computers file. Again, the solutions are going to be available in the repo that I shared with you. Okay, so like I said, dynamic array functions, let's call this something like computers viz. So like I said, dynamic array functions are going to let you write functions and formulas up against your data set right inside of the workbook. We don't want to use this computer's raw data set because that's why we went through the whole process of bringing it into Power Query. We loaded this into a pivot table. So we have a couple options right now. What I'm going to do is let's go to data. We're going to go to queries and connections. So we've loaded this to a pivot table. I'm going to go ahead and actually reference this query. Okay, and I'm going to load this back into a table. Now what we could do, now that I'm thinking about it, is actually load the table first and then build a pivot table on top of this table. But, this is okay for right now. So basically, the issue at hand is that we can only load one query into one modality, right, to start with, which we could have, right, from here. I could insert a pivot table based on this query, but that's okay for right now. We'll just go ahead and go with a referenced query, and let's actually write some dynamic array functions right up against this data set. Okay, so this is our computer's clean data set, right? You want to make sure it's a little confusing, right, when you have your raw data set and your clean data set in the same workbook. So however you want to suffix them or prefix them is up to you. Again, if you don't see this, you're going to go to data, queries and connections, just open that and close that. Okay, so let's try this out. The first thing I want to do is find the unique values in this data set. So this is something that Power Query data profiling did for us, but there's something special about being able to do it in a formula. So for example, if I wanted to know what are the unique values of premium, let's do computers to premium. Oops. There we go. It's right there. Okay. I'm not loving this 2 asterisk thing. So let me go back to queries and connections. Let's rename this, and I'm just going to call this computers clean. Let's hit enter, and I think I like that name more. Okay. So this is giving us the unique values. Now, one thing that's a little confusing here is that unique, like we were doing in Excel, if you remember in the data profiling, if we go back to the data profiler, let's go and edit this, is, right, unique in Power Query profiling means that there's, one and only one of that value. Whereas here in the function, it just means what distinct is, like you're removing duplicates. Now there is a way where you see here exactly once, right? And it actually even says in the parameter here, right? Return rows or columns that appear only once. This is the database concept of unique, but the function is called unique. So it's a little bit, if you're a real purist, this is kind of a heinous name for the function, but I think for the rank and file user, it makes sense. Okay, so we're seeing the unique values there. we could do the same on price. And this time I am going to return items that only appear once, right? So there they are. How many do I have right now? This is another thing to know, and I don't have this in the demo notes, but if we wanted to count the result of the array, you're going to see when I do that, this hash sign. I'm sure somebody else is talking about the spill operators in Excel dynamic array functions, but this is how you're going to aggregate or build atop any dynamic array results with this hash operator. This is really cool stuff. It lets you build completely dynamic, interactive models, dashboards, visualizations, but all we're going to do right now is count. And you're going to see, for example, right, like I could change this to a 0, and instantly this number updates, and I didn't have to worry about, oh, my cell reference has changed. Okay, so that's a pretty lightweight example of using that spill operator, which is pretty cool. Okay, let's try one more thing here. I'm going to do unique, and I'm going to look for computers clean. There's my table. Okay, so basically what this is doing is just returning that range. Let's go ahead and run the rows function on this, which is going to give us the number of rows. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is compare this to just the rows of the table itself and not taking the duplicates, or removing the duplicates, I mean. They are the same. Now, this is another reason that I love having this index column, because this is kind of a safeguard against removing duplicates that aren't really duplicates. It's very possible, it could be possible, that you have a computer that has the same specs, but they're not the same computer, right? So we don't want to accidentally remove any of our rows. This ID number is a safeguard against doing that, unless they are actually the same computer and they were assigned different ID numbers. But let's leave that aside for now. So that's one of the really nice things I love about having index columns, and then being able to do this right from the formula bar here is a lot easier, of course, than loading everything in a Power Query, making the steps, having the user refresh it. So this is a much more, tangible, tactile approach. Okay, so that is the unique function. I'm going to show you a couple more things here, and then we'll close. So the filter function is pretty cool. There are a bunch of these. I'm just showing you a couple. Let's filter computers. Again, the clean. Now what we're going to do is add a criteria, right? So include, what records do we want to have included? Let's do computers clean. I just want the premium computers right now, so let's go ahead and set that equal to a yes. So yes, of course you can filter your data in Excel with these little drop-down buttons, but the issue with those is, you've probably had that before, where somebody wants a view in one way versus another, or maybe you want to filter the data set and have a worksheet of like just the yeses and just the nos. It gets really messy, right, to manage. It gets really messy to maintain and collaborate. And there's some ways around that these days with Excel, and letting people view the data independently. But you know what? Let's just write a formula to fix this, because this is going to let us programmatically decide how we want to filter our data. So hit enter, and we have the data. You can see all of these are yeses, but one of the big bummers with the dynamic array functions is that we don't have the headers right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I think what I could actually do, never tried this before. One thing that we could do is select all. Did that do anything? That didn't like that. So what I'm going to do right now is simple enough, just add this up here. Right, add the headers. So every data set, every table, I should say, in Excel has a header row, then it has the body, and then it has a totals row. Usually the totals row isn't showing, but it's just like a story, beginning, middle, end. We have headers, main, table, and then the footers, the totals. So let's do that, and now everything is linked. So, right, if I were to delete this, we don't have to adjust this. Everything's just going to sync together if we add the headers row like this up here. Okay, so that's pretty cool. A lot more things we can do. Another thing that makes using these formulas a little better than actually using these filters is that we can programmatically add new criteria and add multiple criteria. Again, you can do that here, but it's a little time consuming. I think it's actually in many ways easier to just write the formula yourself. So let's do this. Now, when I do this, usually I like to do Alt Enter to just add the carriage returns for any new criteria I want to add. So I'm going to add the second criteria in parentheses. This is just how my mind thinks to keep this stuff straight. And I'm going to do Alt Enter. Now the asterisk is the AND operator for these filter functions. I'm going to take, let's do another parentheses, computers clean. Let's do speed. And I'm going to make that greater than, make that greater than 30. Okay, and I think I need to close parentheses, hit enter. Okay, so now you're going to see premium, and the speed is always greater than 30 for these. Okay, so we just added a criteria there. If we wanted to change this to an and or to an or, we're going to just add that as a plus, and you could add a bunch of these criteria, right? You could add a series of and or statements, whatever you want to do. It can get kind of complex, but we'll just leave it at this for now. So we just change that from an and to an or, and there are going to be more records now. So I think let's see, how many do we have? The status bar. Okay. Actually, what we could do is just count it, right? So let's count. Well, let's do rows right here. Okay, so this is the or. We've got 6120. And we've got 5212. Again, right, or is going to give you more results. Okay, let's look at one more, and then I think we'll close here. So the sort by function, I'll delete this for right now. Sort by is pretty cool because it's going to let you sort the data. Similar idea here. What I'm going to do is sort by. There's a sort function as well. We're going to focus on sort by. I feel like this works very similarly to some ifs. So what we're going to do is sort by our data set. We are going to sort by, let's say, price. Okay. And now what we're going to say is the order, right? Do we want to sort it ascendingly or descendingly? So there's that. Similar issue here where we don't get those headers by default. So go ahead and add that in, and you'll see that the price is indeed sorted. We have the highest prices on top. If you wanted the lowest prices on top, just change that. Okay. And it's really just plug and chug from here. So if I wanted to, let's sort this one, and then I'm going to do another Alt Enter. Let's do computers clean, premium. Let's make that one a 1. Okay. Easy enough. Okay. So there's the premium ones. We have the yeses. I'm sorry, we have the prices. And then we have it sorted, the yeses and the no's. If we wanted the no's up top, right, that's just change this order. And now we have those here. So it goes down in price. And then try to find a good example. 4188. Okay, I'm not finding one. Okay, 39.99. There we go. Okay, these are all yeses. Well, you can take a look and you'll see what I mean by this. Okay. Can't believe I can't find a good example. That's okay. 38.99. These are all yeses. Anyway, so yeah, you could just keep adding criteria. Like I said, it feels a lot like some if where you're just, or some ifs where you're just adding criteria after criteria and sorting the data that way. So there are a lot of other dynamic array functions. Technically, XLOOKUP is a dynamic array function. Sequence is another really cool one. I've seen people do mind-blowing stuff with sequence. But just to get you started, I think unique, sort by, and filter are some good ones. And again, this would have been very, it seems trite, but this would have been pretty difficult to do some of this stuff in Excel, 10 years ago. So that's what makes this modern. Even though we did do pivot tables, which aren't so modern, but it's all the thought. It's the thought that counts. So if you have modern thinking, I think that hopefully this session has helped. Okay, so that's all I've got for this presentation. A couple of things to follow up with everybody. The first one is my book, Modern Analytics in Excel. So, sound familiar? Take a look at my raw unedited manuscript. So this is available in early release form right now. You can go to this website and learn more. You need a trial login to the publisher's website, or you can subscribe to their website. This is going to give you a raw unedited manuscript. I would love to get your feedback on the book. We're hoping it goes out to press sometime in Q1. But if you want to look at what I have right now as the full manuscript, you can do that. So take a look there. Would love your feedback. Speaking of feedback, evaluations, you can use this QR code or use the link at the bottom. Would love your feedback on this presentation. We are data people, right? So any data you want to give us about what we did well, what we can improve, we will certainly take. Okay, so I appreciate that. All right. This was also given to me as a slide. Microsoft is always seeking research participants, so you can use this QR code or go down to the link here if you would like to be part of research studies with Excel. So that is pretty cool. I love Excel. I love the community. So if you feel the same, this could be a good opportunity for you to pursue that passion. Okay. Thank you all very much. Again, my name is George Mount with StringFest Analytics. You can find me here on particularly LinkedIn. I like to post a lot of memes, so if that's your thing, would love to connect. Visit my website. I post pretty regularly on data analytics. You can also email me if I can help in any way. I do data analytics training and modern data analytics training throughout the country and beyond. So I would love to work with your team on something like that. Okay, I think that's all I've got for right now. So looking forward to checking out all the other sessions. Hope you found some good ones already, and you're going to have a few more of them coming up. Appreciate the team for doing this. Glad that I can be a part of this effort. All right, again, I'm George Mount. Thank you all for tuning in.